So linen stitch, sometimes known as moss stitch, is made up of single crochets and chains. So you do already need to know how to make chains and single crochets for this tutorial. If you're brand new to crochet, you need this tutorial up in the top corner instead to learn those basic stitches. Then come back to this tutorial and you can learn this beautiful stitch. So all of these stitches are worked in rows. So we make a starting chain across and then we work backwards and forwards across to make our square or rectangle of crochet. So the first step for all of these stitches is we're going to need to make a foundation or a starting chain along the bottom that we can crochet into. So to start your foundation chain, make a slip knot using whatever method is most comfortable for you. For me, this is how I make my slip knots. So I take my crochet hook and I put it to one side of my working yarn and I pull out. Then I rotate my hook around 360 degrees, making this twist. Then I pinch the twist and I'm ready to make my starting chain. Your starting chain for linen stitch needs to be a multiple of 2, so an even number. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to make my starting chain 14, but you can make yours however big you want your little swatch to be, or if you're making a full-on blanket or scarf, the width that you want for your project. As long as it's an even number, it doesn't matter. So there's my chain of 14 ready to start row 1 of linen stitch. So row 1 of this stitch is slightly different to all of the future rows. So we're going to skip the first 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, and then make a single crochet into the chain after that. That's the 4th chain from the hook. So I'm going in there. And it doesn't matter whether you go under 1 or 2 loops in the chain, and make a single crochet. So I'm going to yarn over, pull up a loop. So I've got 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through 2. So there's my single crochet. Next, chain 1, skip the next chain. So I'm skipping that chain there and making a single crochet into the stitch after that. So in there. So skip to chain there and put my hook in the chain after that. Making that single crochet. And we're going to repeat this along. So chain 1, skip the next chain and make a single crochet in the chain after that. So skip, single crochet. And again, skip 1, make 1 chain, single crochet in the chain after that. So skip, single crochet. Then chain 1, skip 1 and make a single crochet in the stitch after that. And continue doing this until you reach the end of your chain. So I'm almost at the end of my very short chain here. I'm going to chain 1, skip 1 and make a single crochet in that final chain. And that's the end of row 1. Row 1 was kind of a setup row, and we're going to be repeating row 2 over and over again moving forwards. So let's learn row 2. So to start the next row, make a chain of 2. 1, 2. Then we're going to turn our work over because we're working backwards and forwards in rows. So I'm going to flip my crochet over. So I'm working from the back of that row we've just worked. Then I'm going to skip the first single crochet stitch, that's this stitch here, and I'm going to find the chain 1 space between the next 2 single crochets. So if I pull my crochet apart there, you can see there's a hole. That's where I'm going to make my single crochet. So I'm putting my hook in here, just there. And I'm going to make a single crochet. Just like that. And then I'm going to chain 1, skip 1, and work a single crochet into the next chain space. So we're working our single crochets always into the chain spaces. So I'm going to work single crochet into that chain space there. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet into the next chain space. We're going to repeat this all the way along until the end of the row. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet in the next chain 1 space. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet into the next chain 1 space. chain one, skip one, single crochet into the next chain space. Now I've made it all the way to the end of my row now, and my final space is actually kind of a chain 3 space that we made at the start of row 1 by skipping those first 3 chains, and into that space there we're just going to make a single crochet. So that's our final stitch of the round into that space there, and that's row 2 finished. Now I'm going to show you how to change colours here if you want to, but you can continue on with the same colour. So to change colours, we're actually going to go backwards a step. So I'm going to undo that final stitch, and during that stitch we're going to add in our next colour. So I'm just going to grab another ball of yarn, and what we're going to do is we're going to change colour before the final yarn over and pull through of the single crochet stitch. So work it with me step by step. Put your hook into that space we found, it's kind of a chain 3 space there. Yarn over and pull up a loop, then drop the green colour and pick up the blue colour. You can cut this green yarn here and weave your tail in if you want to, but for now I'm going to leave mine hanging so that I can rip this sample back to show you the next stitch. So I'm going to grab that yarn, and I'm going to yarn over with the new colour and finish off my single crochet stitch by pulling that new colour through those 2 loops on my hook. And we've just changed colour, and you can do this with pretty much any crochet stitch to change colour at the end of the row. You just don't do that final yarn over and pull through, and instead pull through another colour of yarn. You're probably wondering, well, this tail's not secure, there's no knots, what do I do with it? Weave it in securely with a sharp needle, just like I showed in my complete beginner's tutorial. So now we can just continue repeating row 2, changing colours as and when we want to. So to start the next row, which is another repeat of row 2, we chain 2, just like we did in row 2. We turn our work over, and then we make a single crochet into the next chain 1 space, so that's there. And then we repeat that same linen stitch pattern over again. So chain 1, skip 1, single crochet into the next chain 1 space, and repeat across the row, and repeat as many rows as you want to do for your project, or if you're just making a little square until you feel comfortable with the stitch. So now you're ready to learn the next of our 5 stitches. The second stitch we're going to learn is granny stripes. So granny stripes are perfect for beginners because it's only double crochets and chains, and we're again working in the spaces, so it makes it nice and quick to crochet. This is a really good one for blankets if you're looking for a stitch for a crochet blanket. So again, you can work this in multiple colours like I've done here, but I'm going to show you how to work this stitch in one colour so we can practice it. So again, we're going to start our foundation chain with a slip knot using whatever method you prefer. You don't have to use this method if you don't want to. And then for this stitch, your foundation chain needs to be a multiple of 3 plus 1. So it doesn't matter how long your chain is, again, as long as it is a multiple of 3 plus 1. If you've not come across this way of labelling stitch counts before, what you do is you pick a multiple of 3. So for example, I'm going to make a small sample. So let's say 3 times 5 is 15, and then I add 1 onto that 15, so that's 16. But yours could be a lot bigger than that. You could be doing, say, for a large scarf, you might want to do 3 times 30. Which is 90 plus 1, so your stitch count would be 91. So yeah, for this tutorial I'm just going to do 16. So there's my starting chain of 16. So let's learn row 1, and just like linen stitch, row 1 is a little bit different to all of the future rows because we're working into that chain rather than into the stitch pattern. So work 2 double crochets into the 4th chain from your hook. So we're skipping 1, 2, 3 chains because that 3 chains is going to count as our first double crochet stitch. Then work 2 double crochets into that chain there, that 4th chain from the hook there. 2 double crochets. There. So including that chain of 3 there that we're counting as a double crochet, we've made 3 double crochets. So in general, when you're working anything related to granny stripes or granny squares, 3 double crochets worked into the same stitch or the same space is called a granny group. So when I say granny group, it means 3 double crochets worked into the same stitch or space. So we're now going to skip 2 chains, so skip this one, and into the next chain work a granny group of 3 double crochets. So I'm skipping, and then 3 double crochets into the next chain. So 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to skip 2, so skip 2 and work 3 double crochets into the next chain. So skip, 3 double crochets. We're going to work like this all the way across our foundation chain, working 3 double crochets, then skipping 2 chains, 3 double crochets, skip 2 chains, all the way across. So let's work that together. So there's my group of 3 double crochets all into the same chain. Then I'm going to skip 2, 1, 2, work 3 double crochets into the next stitch. And we're going to do this all the way along until the last chain, and then come back to this tutorial and I'll show you what we do differently for our final stitch. So this is what your crochet should look like. Yours might be a bit longer than mine, but you should have those groups of 3 double crochet with 2 skip chains between them. So I've stopped when I've got 3 chains left, and that's because into this final chain here, so usually we would skip 2 and then work 3 double crochets into the next chain. We're not going to be doing that for our final stitch. We're just going to be making 1 double crochet. So I'm going to yarn over and put my hook into that final chain and work 1 double crochet. Just like that. So that is the end of row 1, and next let's learn row 2. So row 2 is the row you're going to be repeating over and over and over again until the end of your project or your little swatch that you're making for practice or whatever you're crocheting right now. So start row 2 with a chain of 3, 1, 2, 3, turn your work over. So remember, we're working in rows, so we do this when we're working in rows. We turn our work over at the end of every row. So we've made a chain of 3 that counts as our first double crochet stitch, and now we're going to be working granny groups into those spaces between the granny groups of row 1. So I'll show you what that looks like. So we've already done our first double crochet of our first group, so we're then going to make 2 more double crochets into this space here. That space there between that first, well, the final stitch of the last round, which is here, and that granny group there. So I'm going in that space there, and we're going to make 2 double crochets, just like that. Then we're going to skip all 3 of these double crochets, so we're only crocheting into the spaces. So skip, 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 and then into the next space there, work 3 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3. And we're going to repeat this all the way along our row. So let's work that together. So I'm going to make a granny group of 3 double crochet into the next space, skipping all of these stitches because we're only working into these spaces. So that's 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets, and 3 double crochets. And into the next space again, we're going to work 3 double crochets. So that's 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets, and 3 double crochets. So continue doing that all the way along your row until you reach the end of the row where I am here, because we're going to be doing something slightly differently for our final stitch. So as you can see, there is no space for us to make our next stitch. So what we're going to do instead is work a double crochet into the final stitch, which is our starting chain from row 1. So we're going to make our double crochet into the top of that first stitch there, so into that chain just there. So hopefully you can see where I've put my hook there. We're going to make 1 double crochet, and that's the end of row 2. So you're just going to repeat this over and over and over again, that row 2, until your piece is the biggest that you want it to be. If you're wanting to change colours with the granny stitch, I'm just going to pull this crochet back to just before I did that final stitch, and I'll show you how we change colours in granny stitch. So we're going to yarn over, put our hook into that first stitch there, well, that final stitch, the top of that starting chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 and stop, drop this colour, pull up a yarn end of the colour you want to join in, lay it over your crochet hook, just like we did with the linen stitch colour change, and pull it through. Then you can cut your tail and weave your end in of that original colour there. So that was how to crochet granny stitch. Let's move on to third stitch. The next stitch we're going to be learning is called the V stitch, and it creates its lovely mesh lacy stitch, and it makes it perfect for summer projects. So let's learn the V stitch. So the starting chain for V stitch needs to be a multiple of 3 plus 2. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to make my foundation chain 17 stitches, so that's a multiple of 3 plus 2. So start with a slip knot using whatever method you prefer, and then make a chain of 3, multiple of 3 plus 2, and come back to this tutorial. So there is my chain made. I've made 17 chains, and then we're going to make something called a V stitch into the 5th chain from the hook. So I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to skip 4 chains. So skip, 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 and then in the 5th chain from the hook, so this chain here, I'm going to work 1 double crochet, then chain 1 and work a double crochet back into that same chain. So I'm going back into that same chain. So what we've just made there is called a V stitch. It's a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, all into the same stitch or space, and those 2 double crochets make a kind of V shape. So next, skip 2 chains. So skip, skip, and then in that 3rd chain make another V stitch. So skip, skip, double crochet, chain 1, then a double crochet back in that same chain. So I'm going back in there, just like that. So that's another V stitch done, and we're going to repeat this all the way along. So skip 2, skip, skip, V stitch in the next stitch. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet back into that same chain there. Then we're going to skip 2, so skip, skip, and then a V stitch into the next chain. So skip, skip, V stitch. And you're going to repeat this all the way along until you've just got 3 chains left to work, and then come back to this tutorial and I'll show you what we do differently in that final chain. So there's my first row of V stitch, and then I've got 3 chains left to work. So what we're going to do differently at the edge of our swatch of V stitch is we're going to only be working 1 double crochet at either side of our row, and that gives us an edge stitch for our little swatch or scarf or whatever it is you're crocheting. So we're going to make a double crochet into the last chain. So skip, skip, double crochet. So this is what your row should look like at the end of row 1. So for row 2, this is the row we're going to be repeating over and over and over again for the rest of our stitch. The first row of these stitches is kind of like a setup row for the rest of the crochet. So start your row with a chain of 3, 1, 2, 3. So do you remember I said that we're going to be starting and ending each row with a double crochet? So this chain 3 counts as that double crochet at the edge of the row. Then turn your work over. So we're not going to be working our V stitches into any stitches from now on. We're only going to be working them into the chain 1 spaces of the V stitches of the row below. So I'll show you what that looks like step by step. So I'm going to make a double crochet into the next chain 1 space. I'm going to skip the first 2 double crochets, so skip, skip, and then in this chain 1 space here, that's where I'm putting my hook, I'm going to make a V stitch. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet back into that same space. And that's the V stitch done into the chain 1 space of the V stitch on the row below. Now skip 2, skip, skip, and work a V stitch into the next chain 1 space. And we're going to repeat this across the row. Work it with me. So I'm working a double crochet into that chain 1 space, chain 1, and then a double crochet back into that same space. And again, so I'm skipping 2, skip, skip, then a V stitch into the next chain 1 space. So a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And again, so we're going to make a V stitch into the next chain 1 space. So skip, skip, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet back into that same space. So continue doing that all the way along your row until you've worked into the final V stitch. So now on the row below, we now have that edge stitch here. So we're going to skip the next double crochet and work a double crochet into the top of that edge stitch, which is the starting chain, the turning chain from row 1, sorry. So I'm skipping this and I'm making 1 double crochet into the top of that starting chain. And then we're going to repeat this row over and over and over again. So chain 3, turn your work over, then make a V stitch into each of the chain 1 spaces across, and then a double crochet into the top of the starting chain. And that's it. V stitch is fairly easy and it gives such a lovely open lacy stitch. So let's move on to the 4th stitch, which is a textured stitch. This beautiful textured stitch is called griddle stitch, or it's also called spider stitch. I'm going to call it spider stitch because I think it sounds more fun as a name. So spider stitch is made up of combining single crochets and double crochets together to get this really simple and easy textured stitch. So let's learn the spider stitch. So let's start with a slip knot again, using whatever method you prefer. And then your starting chain for spider stitch needs to be an odd number. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to go for unlucky 13. So I'm going to chain 13. So there's my starting chain of 13 stitches. So to work our first row, so that kind of setup row for the rest of the stitch, work a single crochet into the second chain from the hook. So we're skipping the first chain, working a single crochet into the stitch after that. Then into the next chain, work a double crochet. So into that next chain, work a double crochet. And then we're actually going to repeat this across, alternating between single crochet and double crochet. So in the next stitch, I'm working a single crochet, then a double crochet, then a single, and a double. So continue repeating that all the way across your chain. You should end up, your final stitch should be a double crochet, and you should have that if you've chained an odd number of stitches and you've not made any mistakes here. You're just alternating between single and double crochet every stitch. So come back to this tutorial once you've finished working your first row, and I'll show you what's different for row 2. So this is what your crochet should look like at the end of that first row. The back is quite textured because of the difference in height between the single and the double crochets. That's what makes this stitch so textured. So I'm going to show you row 2 now. This is the row that you're going to be repeating over and over again for the rest of your crochet swatch or project. So start row 2 with a chain of 1 and then turn your crochet over to work back and forth in rows. Now your first stitch here that you're working into, just there, should be a double crochet. So we're going to start with a single crochet. And we're going to alternate between single and double crochets all the way along again. So in the next stitch, a double crochet, and in the stitch after that, a single crochet. Now if you lose sort of count of where you are between your single and your double crochets, you need to have a look at the stitch you're about to work into. If the stitch you're about to work into is a single crochet, you need to work a double crochet into it. So that's a single crochet there. I'm going to work a double crochet into it. And if your next stitch is a double crochet, so that taller, more bumpy textured stitch there, then I'm going to work a single crochet into it. So kind of the opposite stitch to the one that you're crocheting into. That's what gives it this texture. So that's basically spider stitch. It's a really easy stitch where you just alternate between those single and double crochets to give that beautiful texture. Here is what the finished stitch looks like again. Maybe this is the perfect stitch for your next project. If not, let's move on to stitch 5. For our penultimate stitch, we have crossed double crochet. This again is an easy stitch and we're going to be alternating rows of single crochet and something called crossed double crochet, which is actually a really easy variation on a double crochet stitch. This is a textured stitch that is a little bit lacy and it looks slightly different on the two sides of the stitch. So let's get learning crossed double crochet. For this stitch, our starting chain needs to be an odd number. Again, it can be any length you want it to be, but it does need to be an odd number. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to go for 15 chains. There's my starting chain of 15 chains. So row 1 and all odd numbered rows are rows of single crochet. Nothing special, just straight single crochet. So we're going to skip the first stitch and make a single crochet in the second chain from the hook. And then work a single crochet in each chain across until the end. So I'll meet you at the end of row 1 and then I'll show you what we're doing for row 2. So there's my row 1 finished. You should now have an even number of single crochet. Start row 2 with a chain of 3. This counts as your first double crochet stitch. Then turn your work over. So we're now going to work a crossed double crochet in the second and the third single crochets. So I'll show you what that looks like. So we're going to skip this first stitch here because we've already got a chain coming out of it to pretend that chain is a double crochet. So to work a cross double crochet, all we do is we work the 2 double crochets out of order. So we skip that stitch there and make our first double crochet in the stitch after that. So I'm skipping this one, working a double crochet in the next stitch. Then we're going to go back and make a double crochet in the stitch we missed. And we're going to do it around a double crochet we just made. And don't worry, it is easier than it sounds. And I'll show you how to do it step by step several times. So I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to put my hook in that skip stitch there. So I'm putting my hook in there. Just like that. And then I'm going to make a double crochet. So yarn over and pull up a loop, just like that. And as you can see, we've crossed our double crochet stitches there. So let's finish off this double crochet, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that is crossed double crochet. We've crossed those 2 double crochets over each other. We're going to repeat this all the way along. So I'm going to skip one, work a double crochet into the next stitch, and then we're going to go back and make a double crochet in that skipped stitch. So yarn over, put your hook into the stitch that we skipped, yarn over, pull up a loop, and I've found that naturally this stitch here, that loop is a little bit bigger, that one we pull up is a little bit longer than it usually is in a normal double crochet, because it's trying to get around that double crochet we've already made. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and again, so we're going to skip one, so we're skipping this one here, and then in the next stitch we make a double crochet. Then we're going to go back and work a double crochet in the skipped stitch. So I'm putting my hook in here, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Skip a stitch, work a double crochet in the stitch after that. Then we're going to work a double crochet into that skipped stitch. So yarn over, put your hook into the skipped stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop slightly further than you normally would. Yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2. So we're going to repeat that 2 more times. So I'm going to skip the next stitch, make a double crochet in the stitch after that. Then I'm going to go back and make a double crochet in the skip stitch there. And one more time together. Skip the next stitch, work a double crochet in the stitch after that. Go back and make a double crochet in the skip stitch, so I'm going in there to make that crossed double crochet. So once you reach the end of your row, you should have 1 stitch left to work, and into that 1 stitch we're going to create an edge stitch just like we did in the V stitch, and we're going to make 1 double crochet into that final stitch. So because we count that first chain as a double crochet as well, so that first chain at the beginning of the row, we're going to create edge stitches up the side of just 1 double crochet on those even rows. So to continue working cross double crochet, we're going to alternate between a row of single crochet and then a row of cross double crochet. So your third row will be chain 1, this does not count as a stitch, turn your work over, single crochet in each stitch across, and I'll meet you at the end of the row. So I'm almost at the end of the row, and my final stitch is our turning chain, so our starting chain of 3 here that counts as a stitch. So because it counts as a stitch, I'm going to work a single crochet into the top of that chain. And then we're just going to keep repeating row 2 and row 3 over and over again until your sample is the size that you want it to be. So the crossed double crochet look different. This is the back of them here, and this is the front. They look slightly different on the 2 sides of the fabric, but this would still work really well for a blanket or a scarf. Let's move on to the final stitch. So the final stitch we're going to learn is ripple stitch, and there are quite a lot of different ripple stitches out there. I think this is the most beginner friendly ripple stitch because there's no decreases. This ripple is only made up of double crochets and chains. So let's get started. So again, make a slip knot using your preferred method, and for this ripple stitch your starting chain needs to be a multiple of 12 plus 3. So it can be any multiple of 12 and then add an extra 3 stitches on. So if you were making a blanket, for example, you might do 120 stitches, so 10 ripple repeats with an extra chain 3, so 123 would be your starting chain. So for this sample I made a chain of 27 to show you this, but I'm actually going to make a bigger swatch to show you this stitch just so I can show you sort of the peaks and the troughs a couple of times just so we can get this stitch in our head, because I think this is probably the most tricky stitch that I'm teaching you in this tutorial. So yeah, we're going to do a bigger swatch than this. So this swatch I did 2 ripple repeats, so 2 lots of 12, but for the purposes of this tutorial I'm going to do 3, so that's 36 plus 3. So I'm going to make a starting chain of 39. So you make your starting chain however big you like and then come back to this tutorial and we'll learn row 1. So there is my starting chain of 39 and we're ready to learn ripple stitch. So start row 1 by making a double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. So we're going to skip 3, 1, 2, 3 and make a double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. And then make a double crochet into each of the next 4 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So there we go. So far we have made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 double crochets, and we've got this starting chain here of 3 that counts as our 6th double crochet. So the bit we're going to crochet next is so what I'm going to do as we're learning ripple stitch, I'm going to refer to peaks and troughs. So the peak is this part of the stitch where we've got an increase, and the trough is this part down here where we've got a decrease. So we've now crocheted up to here and we're on a trough. So the easiest way to decrease stitches is to skip. So we're going to skip 2 here. So skip, skip, and then we're going to make a double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. So I've skipped 2 chains and then I'm going to make a double crochet into the next chain. And do that until we've made 5 double crochets after those skip 2 chains. So this is my 3rd, 4th and 5th there. So hopefully you can kind of see the part here that we've crocheted. So we're now at the peak of the ripple pattern. So to do an increase here, we're just going to chain 2. We're going to make a chain 2 space as an increase. Then work a double crochet into each of the next 5 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's my 5 double crochets into 5 chains there after that chain 2 space. So if we line it up again next to our swatch here, we've done this peak, we've done this trough, and we're back at another trough of the ripple. So we're going to do exactly the same as what we did down here to decrease. We're going to skip 2 chains. So skip, skip, then work a double crochet into each of the next 5 chains. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're then at a peak, so chain 2 and then work a double crochet into each of the next 5 chains. And you're going to repeat this all the way along. So we're going to work 5 double crochets, skip 2 chains, 5 double crochets, make 2 chains, 5 double crochets, skip 2 chains, 5 double crochets, make 2 chains. And do that all the way along until you reach the end of your starting chain, and come back here and I'll show you row 2, which is the row that we're going to be repeating over and over again for the rest of this ripple. And this row is different to row 1, so do come back and watch it. So I've made my way to the end of row 1 and I realise we're actually going to be doing something different in this final chain. So I've just worked 4 double crochets after a skipped chain of 2. So I've skipped 2 stitches here. This is the trough of our ripple stitch. So into this final stitch we're actually going to work 2 double crochets, and that's because our first and last stitch of every row is an edge stitch, just like when we crocheted V-stitch. So I'm going to do 2 double crochets into the next stitch. So that's 1, 2. Okay, Now we're ready to start row 2. So if you can see here, this is what my crochet looks like, and you can kind of see where these peaks and troughs have started to take shape. So the way the ripple stitch is actually crocheted is we stack all of our increases on top of each other to create the peak, and we stack all of our decreases on top of each other to create the trough. So that's what we're going to do with our future rows. So start row 2 with a chain of 3. This counts as your first double crochet stitch. Then turn your work over. Now work a double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches, and that includes this first stitch here. Usually when we work a row of double crochet where our chain 3 counts as our first stitch, we skip this stitch. But if you remembered, I said that we do an increase where we have 2 stitches in the same stitch at either side of our work to create an edge. That's what this is here. So my first stitch is into this first stitch here. So I'm going to make a double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we've now made it to the trough of the ripple. So I'm going to skip 2 stitches. So in the first row we skip 2 chains. In future rows we're skipping 2 stitches. So I'm going to skip both of those. Skip, skip, and then work a double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I've now reached the chain 2 space at the peak of the ripple. Into that chain 2 space, work a double crochet, chain 2, 1, 2, and then a double crochet back into that space, so back in there. And that's what we do every time we come to a chain 2 space, is a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet. So let's work that stitch repeat again together one more time, because this is the repeat you're going to repeat across your whole row and on every row until the end of your ripple. So we're going to work a double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're at the trough, so we're going to skip 2 stitches, and the 2 stitches we always skip at a trough is the one before the 2 skip stitches and the one after the 2 skip stitches on the previous row. So kind of the 2 stitches either side of that space there are the 2 we always skip at the trough. So I'm going to skip, skip, then work a double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then now we're at a chain 2 space at the peak of the ripple, so work 1 double crochet, chain 2, 1 double crochet. And we repeat this over and over again until the end of the row, and then come back to this tutorial just as you reach the end of the row, and I'll show you what we do differently here, and I'll show you again how to change colour, because I think ripple stitch works best when you change colour every 2 rows. So yeah, come back to this tutorial to learn that. So I'm almost at the end of row 2, and my final stitch is my turning chain from the previous round, and that counts as a double crochet. So into it I'm going to work 2 double crochets to create that edge stitch again. So I'm going to work 2 double crochets into the top of that starting chain that counts as a double crochet. So 1, 2, and then because I'm going to change colour, I'm going to stop this double crochet before the final yarn over and pull through. So I stopped it there with 2 loops on my hook, just like I showed you in Granny Stitch. That was stitch 2 that we've just learned. So I'm then going to select my next colour. So I've gone for this yellow colour, and I'm going to lay that yarn over the top of my crochet hook, grab a loop and pull it through those last 2 loops to create a seamless colour change. I can then snip that yarn that I've already done and weave my ends in, and then we're ready to continue on repeating row 2 over and over again. So chain 3, turn, and then a double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches, not skipping that first one. You can rewind and rewatch this tutorial as much as you need to until you feel confident with the ripple stitch. So I hope you've enjoyed learning these beginner crochet stitches. If you'd like to learn more crochet stitches, I'm currently running a series on my channel where we learn new crochet stitches every week. Loads of them are beginner friendly, so I'll link the playlist for that on your screen here. I have other crochet tutorials you might want to check out next on my channel. Do subscribe if you don't want to miss any future tutorials, and I'll see you again next week for another video.